It's almost July. A new 5-week Marvel Snap season is slated to start on July the 3rd. The Spotlight Cache's economy overhaul is likely coming with the patch on July 11th. In today's video, it's going to run you through the data mine releases of all the cards that are slated to release next month. Enjoy. Our July season pass card for Marvel Snap is the Phoenix Force. 5/6 on reveal, revive one of your destroyed cards and merge with it. That card can move each turn. As someone who works outside the box a lot and plays a lot of different things and has a lot of different ideas typically, I'm gonna be honest, I'm kind of drawing a bit of a blank as to where this card could truly be useful. At best, this feels like a card that could revive something that you have getting blown up by like an opposing Shang-Chi if it's like turn 6 and your big thing is already in play and you don't have priority, so you can't protect with Cosmo or armor. That being said, it feels like a lot of hoops to jump through. Self-destroy decks that are blowing up their own cards tend to be blowing up a variety of their own cards, so not knowing what you're getting back with Phoenix Force doesn't seem appealing. I guess you could try and do something novel with like Ebony Maw and then Killmongering it and then bringing this back as like a 13 power card that can move around the board, but that also seems like a lot of moving parts and hoops to jump through to basically get a 13 power vision, which is smaller than a vision that you would have if you just like played Shuri into Vision. So I'd really love to know in the comments down below if any of you all at home have ideas for where we could start with this card. I'm not really certain where it could be useful, but hopefully I'm missing something. But at a glance, this feels like it has the potential to be the worst season pass card since the original Nick Fury released back at a 5/7 stat line forever ago. Thankfully, the rest of the data mine July card releases are more exciting and I think more powerful than what the Phoenix Force is going to be bringing in the season pass. Starting with Jean Grey here, 3 energy, 3 power. Ongoing, players must play their first card each turn here if possible. Some very clear synergies with this card right off the bat is that this card will make it easier for your Nebula to tick up every single turn if you play her out earlier. Kitty Pryde will both be a card that is good with Jean Grey because you can play Kitty Pryde to your Jean Grey location and then play something somewhere else, but also be a good card against Jean Grey for that same reason. Your opponent can do that as well. It is also worth noting though that Jean Grey says if possible, so if your opponent is able to fill up the opposite side of her location, they can mitigate her effect. So things like Brood, for example, could be good with her. She's a 3 energy card, so Silver Surfer could potentially be a spot where we could really see her shine. You know, you curve Jean Grey into your own Brood to then mitigate her controlling effect on your side of the board for turns 5 and 6, while your opponent is still restricted on what they get to do. This seems like a card that'll be excellent into Galactus, although that deck's not super popular anymore. This definitely could have been something to help shut that down when it was at its peak, but the deck still is around the fringes, so it's worth noting this is an additional hate card against that archetype. Up next, we have Echo, 1 energy, 2 power. After your opponent plays an ongoing card here, remove its abilities. I think Echo is a really interesting and awesome addition to Marvel Snap's lineup of tech cards that provides you utility in different matchups. It's most notably a card that you'll have the option to either play out proactively to discourage your opponent from playing ongoing cards to a particular path, or if you're playing a deck that's able to maintain priority, you can use Echo before your opponent is likely to deploy a card to a particular location to kind of get them and strip the effect from it proactively. One use that springs to my mind right away is if I'm playing Echo inside of a Daredevil deck, I could play her out on turn 5 to the location that I know my opponent's going to play something like Sarah at, for example, to negate one of their most powerful cards. Echo is notably a card that can counteract an opposing Cosmo if you catch the lane that Cosmo is going to be coming in, or you could proactively play Echo out to a location to stop your opponent from Cosmoing it. So, for example, if you're a Wong enjoyer, well, this will obviously take up one of the slots in your Wong path. You can play Echo down to where your Wong is going to be deployed, and then you can Wong safely there, knowing that your opponent's going to have to kind of offer up a different ongoing card to Echo before they could Cosmo that path. There's a lot of interesting applications for this card, and I think this has potential to be one of the most widely used cards from all of the July releases. I think it's probably the one that I'm most interested to get my hands on personally. Our next July card release is Legion. 5 energy, 7 power. On reveal, replace each other location with this one. The design on this card is really, really interesting. So, at a minimum, Legion is going to add some important variance mitigation to the decks that you're playing, being able to wipe out locations that are bad for you and replace them with whatever location on the board is most beneficial to you. Seems like something that's powerful to have access to. Legion's cost is a little bit on the expensive side, but 7 stats for 5 energy isn't necessarily terrible. There's going to be a little bit of variance in how useful Legion is depending on what the situation on the board looks like. But one situation that's going to come up quite frequently, especially in the current metagame, is wiping out copies of the flooded location that Storm is creating. You play Legion out on turn 5. It's going to turn the flooded and the other location in play into whichever of the other two is more favorable to you, giving you the option to deploy things naturally to the spot your opponent thought they had locked out on that final turn in the game. Legion's also going to sporadically create really insane games. Imagine creating 2 extra copies of Elysium going into the final turn, or putting 3 copies of the Nexus on the board to make absolutely nutty numbers pop off in every direction. At a minimum, I think this card's going to be really fun to play with, and I think there's a real chance that it's competitive depending on what the meta game looks like and what other locations keep getting added to the game. Our final July card release is Mirage. 2 energy, 2 power. On reveal, copy the lowest cost card in your opponent's hand and give it +2 power. One way to think about Mirage is that her baseline is 2 energy, 4 stats, and she's going to be adding 2 additional power to whatever else you're playing from the opponent's hand. This card's also going to be enabling things like Collector or potentially Devil Dinosaur when it comes to keeping your hand full, and she's another card that works with Quinjet to get a cost discount on cards you're playing that didn't start inside of your deck. One thing that Mirage is going to do that's nice as well is she's giving you a little bit of information about the output range of what your opponent's hand currently looks like, so you can kind of sculpt your game plan around what your opponent is doing. We've seen cards like White Queen in the past be very beneficial since they inform on what your opponent's plays can make, and Mirage is a lot more cost efficient at getting down early to give you that information at a much lower tempo price, even if you don't get a chance to use the card that she's taking from your opponent's hand. Overall, I think this card has the potential to be kind of a generically reasonable 2-drop, since the opportunity cost of fitting this on curve is rather low. But I'd love to know your thoughts on an effect like this, since its range can vary a lot depending on what you're looking to do in your deck list. Thanks for making it through the end of the video. Snap the like button if you enjoyed my musings on this topic, and leave a comment down below letting me know your thoughts on the card releases that are coming to July and which one you're most excited to get your hands on.